part. So, yeah, I think we also have Ms. Basu here. She'll join in a second. Yeah. Till then, all time to chat.
Wonderful.
Aditi, I think we have just 1 minute to start the conference. I can't hear you. Maybe you're on mute.
Yeah, we just have a minute before we start the
Okay, yeah, because I just got a notification that this meeting is being live streamed. So.
Yeah, sure. It takes 30 seconds or a minute to go on the YouTube. That's why a minute before the live streaming has been started.
Okay.
Women uplifting the world, so inspiring.
Definitely.
Absolutely. I have a quick question, Aditi. I'm wondering, how can I share my slides, if that's possible? Yeah.
You will be the co-host at the time of presentation. So Kavita ji is helping on this part. No?
Thank you so much.
And please feel free to remind Kavita ji, 2 minutes before you are going to get, live as a speaker. So you can always give her a reminder. Of course, she has an agenda for reference with her. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
So
welcome.
We
are live.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Yeah, just because if participants are using YouTube, they should not feel that nothing is happening. So whenever we are ready, I will start the recording as well. Just let me know.
Yeah. So we welcome Ms. Basu too, and over to you, Ankita, to take it over from here for we can start the program till then.
Thank you. Yeah, let's start. Greetings, my warm greetings to all of you. Thank you so much. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We're all commencing here from all over the place. Thank you so much. My heart feels so happy to see all of you. We are commencing here for this virtual parallel event, which is hosted by ISKCON Vaishnavi Ministry and co-hosted by GEV and Brahmakumaris. So thank you to all of you. And today is International Women's Day. So we are celebrating this day to celebrate the strength and determination of each and every woman globally. So together, women are a powerhouse, and I can already feel it seeing all of your beautiful faces. And we are meeting on this hallmark day for the UN CSW67 session, which is the session of the Commission of the Status of Women. And this conference, the theme of this conference is Innovation and Technological Change and Education in the Digital Age for Achieving Gender Equality and the Empowerment of All Women and Girls. We see that there is with age, there is a digital revolution, but this digital revolution also presents some digital divide as well. So today we have a team of distinguished speakers who will come and present on relevant topics. I'm very excited about their topics. Just some housekeeping rules before we start. So I'll be calling some speakers. We have an agenda in place. I'll be calling the speakers. Each speaker will probably be speaking on their presentation for 6 to 7 minutes. And then towards the end, we'll have question and answers as well. We'll be taking follow-up questions from the audience. So we'll be having that, which is very exciting because it'll be more interactive. We have 2 speakers who have to leave for other important engagements. So we'll take up their questions right after the presentation, but mostly all the question and answers Q&A will be towards the end. Just to keep everybody in time check, again, presentation is 6 to 7 minutes and question and answers. I'll relay. We have a team of hardworking co-hosts and team which will be relaying all the questions from the audience. So we will keep everybody in time, 1 to 2 minutes of answering the questions so that we can be in the conference time. So with that, let's get started. I would like to hand over to Dr. Aditi Mishal. We all know her. She's the Chief Sustainability Officer and Dean at Govardhan Ecovillage. She will let us know about the event. Dr. Aditi.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ankita, for moderating this beautiful event. And happy International Women's Day. And I'm attending this particular event from New York at this particular point of time, attending the UN CSW67. Let me tell you, it's a very happening, event or convention that I've seen, and it's happening in the heart, of UN. That is at the headquarters of UN at New York. It's an amazing place to be. It was nostalgic feeling, just entering the building of United Nations at New York and being close to the General Assembly of New York. The CSW67 priority theme has focus on innovation and digital technologies. What we would like to add here to the present theme of UNCSW is that women can contribute a lot with their genuine feminine compassion towards responsible innovation and a sustainable world. We all know that innovation is as good as the innovator. So in Hindu faith, and in fact also in the Vaishnav tradition, we are aware that creation happens through Shakti, the feminine energy of the Lord, and not through the Shaktiman himself, that is the Lord. So even nature has gifted Srujan, or what we call as creation of progeny, which is the highest form of creation. And I'm sure all of you will agree, we are mothers, we are daughters. We know the highest creation is that of a mother giving birth to a child. So that has been naturally gifted to women as a responsibility. So imagine a world with development, with technologies, with innovation, which have women substantial contribution, which will make it more complete, beautiful, and responsible. So the panel has been curated towards this to bring out the interdisciplinary, intergenerational, and interfaith perspective towards responsible innovation for sustainable world. So that's the summary on the purpose of this particular event. And over to you, Ankita.
Thank you, Dr. Aditi. That was a very, very nice overview of what we are going to see in our session next. Let me welcome Dr. Radha Cornea next. She's from the organizer team. Who doesn't know her, she is our ISKCON Vaishnavi Minister, GBC. Let me take a few minutes to introduce her, and then we welcome her to give the welcome address. Let me share my screen. Let me know once you can see my screen. Thank you. Radha Cornea, again, she is the ISKCON Vaishnavi Minister, GBC. Who doesn't know her? Her services include work with ISKCON Communications and Child Protection Office, and she's a graduate from Harvard Law School and practiced in the US. She represents victims of domestic abuse. She's very passionate about that. I have heard her talks personally as well. And she's a trained peer counselor for domestic abuse issues and previously taught at Champaign University School of Law at the University of San Diego. Please, I welcome Radha Cornea. Please come and give the welcome address.
Thank you so much for your welcome. I should clarify, I'm not a doctor, so please don't ask me for any medical advice. On behalf of ISKCON Vaishnavi Women's Ministry, it's my honor to welcome you to this program, Responsible Innovation for a Sustainable World, the right blend of intent, intuition, and feminine heart with information and technology. And I just want to emphasize my deep, deep belief that the feminine heart, bringing women's voices into this conversation about sustainability is so critical. First, let me extend my gratitude to our co-sponsors, the Brahmakumaris, who are well known for their women-led activism in many different fields, including sustainability, and the Govardhan Ecovillage, which showcases a host of new sustainable technologies and practices that are based on Vedic ecology. We are also deeply grateful to our distinguished panel of speakers who bring a depth of experience in sustainability work and activism, in spiritual practice for transformation, and in the use of digital technology and STEM innovation to change things for the better. This is going to be such a dynamic and exciting discussion, and I'm so happy to be here. It's crucial, as I said before, to have women involved in conversations about sustainability and how to make our world a better place. It can be tempting for people like me who were born in the 60s and 70s. It can be tempting for us to see science and technology as enemies of sustainability. I grew up in a time when the cost of the agricultural green revolution was really coming to the forefront, where we could see that pollution-related illness, tragic loss of wildlife was directly related to the chemicals and the new technologies that had been introduced starting after World War II that were designed to combat hunger by increasing crop production. But the real problem is not science and technology. The real problem is not the tools, it's the mindset with which we use them. Our industrial and post-industrial economies have been based on a mechanistic worldview that seeks solutions in controlling the material resources. If there's a problem, the mechanistic worldview says you simply change the way that you're using your resources. But we can't solve the sustainability problem, or really any problem. We can't solve it by using the mentality that got us there in the first place. The Bhagavad Gita teaches us that everything comes from the same divine source, and that every living being, human and non-human, is a part and parcel of the divine. Real sustainability has to rest on that interconnectedness and the values of compassion, empathy, and understanding that flow from that connectedness. We have learned to our cost that what hurts one species hurts all species. What hurts one part of the world eventually resonates in every other part of the world. Women have a unique contribution to make in bringing forth this new worldview. We are biologically programmed for communication, for connection, and relationship building. The parts of our brain that deal with communication and relationship are actually larger than similar parts of male brains. We have a special gift and something special to offer in this conversation on how to build a sustainable world. Solving worldwide problems requires a diversity of voices. Fundamental to that diversity is including women from different areas, of different ages, and who bring different experience and insights into the conversation. We hope this panel will be part of a larger effort to elevate women's voices in the sustainability space and to create a new approach to building a better world. Again, thank you all so much for being here. We are so honored by your presence.
Thank you. Thank you, Radha Cornea. Thank you so much. I really echo with what you said, that women should be the heart of sustainable development. And I really take away that from your talk today. Thank you. We welcome our speakers now. Our first speaker for today is Vashish Uppal. I'm very warmly welcoming you. Just a brief introduction about Vashish Uppal. Screen. So she has represented WWF at intergovernmental processes, and she has over 28 years of experience in working on environmental governance, forest and protected areas. And she has been working on issues like IP and LC rights, forest rights, food security, social equity, and civil society engagement. I welcome you, Vashish Uppal. She'll be speaking on the topic of role of women in conservation and sustainable development and need for innovation with special focus on policy and governance.
Thank you. Namaskar. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. I know that we are connecting to each other from all across the world. That's really nice. Greetings from India. Wishing everyone a very happy Women's Day and a very happy Holi also. Today is a festival of colors for us. And I think women can celebrate color and actually they can convey, the diversity no better, I think, in the best way possible than anyone else. It's really an honor to be part of this August gathering. So, women have been pioneers, especially for conservation, as well as if you call sustainable development, maybe that term is not really used. If you look at the Chipko movement in India, Gaura Devi, or you look at Sugata Devi, who led the silent protest for the Silent Valley, you look at joint forest management, where actually women have really come forward and protected their forests, their resources, or water conservation. So it is not that women are not actually playing a role in conservation and sustainable development. They have been doing it since generations. And actually, we have such inspiring models in our country, at least. And on aspects of sustainable development, I think in each household, if you look, women are probably the most judicious users of natural resources, whether it is use of water, whether it is use of food, or even fuel wood or medicinal plants, if it is a rural household. I think even energy, I think as mothers, probably we are forever telling our children or siblings or whoever that please switch off lights, make sure the tap is shut. All of that, it's kind of, mostly I would say it's kind of inborn, because we are actually users. We may not be decision makers. Slowly, I think that's where we have to reach, but we are users of natural resources. And for us, it's very important that, we actually know exactly, if you look at a woman cooking, she doesn't have to measure things. She knows exactly what is the portion which needs to go in, and it's never more or never less. So I think that's what I feel, that women are the most judicious users. Even food is biodiversity in a manner. And women farmers have played a very key role in saving seeds, in using their traditional knowledge on agriculture, participating in initiatives related to sustainable farming, as well as displaying their entrepreneurship in promoting sustainable livelihoods. So we have, kind of rural women who have actually come forward, use natural resources, whether they're making, grass baskets, whether they're making some handicrafts. So they all are actually also using natural resources very judiciously. However, I would still say there is some kind of an alarm bells ringing, because there is globally, it's recognized that there is loss of biodiversity, which we are actually losing very rapidly. We have a growing population, urbanization, land use change. All of that is impacting on natural resources, and it is leading to land degradation. But states have yet to internalize the consequences, because these are something which are very slow. And I think the impact and equip themselves to meet the challenges of poor availability of resources, changing climate, water scarcity, and the impact of the loss of ecosystem services and functions are gendered. So that's very clear that these losses, yes, there is an impact of climate change, there's an impact of water scarcity, but how does it affect the woman, I think, is something which we really need to see. Rural women, and especially girls in India, bear the responsibility of collecting resources like fuel, fodder, water, minor forest produce from forests, maintaining agriculture biodiversity, ensuring there's pollination happening, because they are planting diverse things, which is getting difficult and time consuming, because, these resources are shrinking, and, you have to actually put in more hours, more time, more labor to do that. And I think in a way also women's traditional and continued kind of a lower status in a household and limited tenurial security also kind of limits their role in decision making in management and conservation of these resources, though they are prime resource users, but often they are not the main decision makers regarding to them. So that is what I think is something which we really need to look at and see how policy and governance actually is transformed to change this, because that's what is really needed. Because, yes, we have 33% reservation for women in panchayat, but still they're largely excluded from decisions related to policies and plans at the village, panchayat, district level. Even in terms of access to credit, I think women SHGs have been able to access credit a bit less than other, mixed SHGs or whatever. So I think that's something we need to look at. And I think the functioning of the state, the way it functions to provide jobs, assets, resources, that process often does not consult women, or does not think in a gendered manner, if I can use that term. Plus the increasing migration of men sometimes actually leaves women playing the man's role as well as the women's role, and they are the main caretakers of home, household, income, natural resources, everything. So I mean, that is where we need policy and decision making, to be flexible, to be nuanced, to understand that, how, like, these are of course traditional domain of men, but how not to ignore women's unique knowledge, needs, or, and the requirement. So basically, and also I would say that most women are also reluctant to assert, their property rights, or, kind of, because, that's like, they've also got kind of, their behavior is also something which we need to look at. We need to look at, and we need to encourage this, we need to provide these openings. That is it. So gender roles, of course, I would say they affect everything, economic, political, social, ecological opportunities. There is now ample evidence that unless we consider gender and mainstream it, we will continue the increase of biodiversity loss, and we will lose important traditional knowledge, skills, and experiences. So to conserve biodiversity, we need to understand and expose gender differentiated biodiversity practices for sustainable development. That is very important. You need to look at the 3 pillars, and you need to see how, what kind of gender differentiated, practices is what women use. How do they approach the whole thing? How can you get gender knowledge acquisition as well as resources, as well as use of recent innovations in the field of technology, capacity, technology transfer itself. We have some great examples, millet sisters in the Deccan, women in Assam conserving, species. We have women in Odisha, Peer Jahania, who are actually saving coastlines, turtle nesting sites. We have women who are actually leading, this whole thing of saving rivers. All of that is there. But how do you actually translate it into a policy level, especially now when globally there is a very clear commitment under the Convention on Biological Diversity and, of course, the Sustainable Development Goals, that gender concerns need to be addressed. All of them need to emphasize clear linkages, and they actually emphasize clear linkages between gender equality, poverty alleviation, biodiversity conservation, and sustainable development. So what do we need now? We need good policies, we need innovation, we need technology, we need flexibility, which actually enhances the recognition of women's role, their traditional knowledge and practices, and brings to the center the role of women in conservation and sustainable development. Thanks. I will just thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Vaisheshri, for your amazing talk. I think the takeaway that I took from your talk was women are prudent users in their immediate environment and even for natural resources. So we should really encourage women, empower women. But right now the policy process doesn't take women that seriously. Since you have to leave for your immediate commitment, I'll just ask the follow-up question we have. So again, because I was listening to your talk that women are prudent users and the policy process right now doesn't take women very seriously. As you said, men take the role of women and man both. So how can policy be more gender responsive, like keeping in mind that the responsiveness percolates the level of on-ground implementation?
I think it's a very important question. I think consideration of gender is imperative for effective policy. Any policy which you make needs to be nuanced in a manner that, it takes in these gendered considerations. So, of course, women are powerful agents of change, and their leadership is critical in community revitalization, natural resources, social development, sustainable development, whatever you say. So how do we ensure, and policy should not just be limited, according to me, to be, yes, it's a very big welcome step that we have these special schemes for women. Government runs these special schemes for women. But yes, besides that, how do we actually mainstream gender concerns into the policy making, into the implementation of policy? I think that is what is important, because the policy making process is rather constrained, by the way, by, I would suggest, low representation of and participation of women in policy making spaces. And I think that is what is important, that we need to, get people on board, get women on board into these spaces. So decision making must involve women's participation in policy making forums to advance the, the kind of the extra bit which women actually bring in. So shifts in gender equality, and also it also requires not only awareness and behavior change, but also the whole fundamental power dynamics, that define gender norms and relationships. How can women use ICT to actually empower them? What is the role ICT plays? Are we actually empowering women, with providing them the right information and communication technology so that they can also voice their concerns? I think these are small things. Plus, what is actually kind of sometimes worrying is that if you ask anyone, everyone says, yes, we understand gender, we are very gender sensitive. But I think it's not enough to be gender sensitive. We have to be gender responsive, So from the beginning, we have to factor in that. I think we should not be either reactive or just sensitive, that yes, we acknowledge, that there are these differences. But the fact that how does that policy, whatever we are doing, actually imbibes or includes that, the gender factor. I think that is very important. And again, the thing is, how do these policy interventions actually shape and influence gender roles, and whether they contribute to greater gender equality? I think that is important. So there should be some things. How do we measure the policy implementation? How is it measured? Is it only measured in numbers? Is it also measured in these aspects? So I think that is something which we need to look at, So of course, more tenure security, like I said, ICT is a big thing. I think that's what we need to do, more empowerment. So that's what I would suggest is, some of my suggestions for this. Thank you, Aditi.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I totally agree with you. Women should be involved from the beginning in decision-making of these policy. Thank you for your time, and thank you for your such an empowering talk, Ms. Bashishupal. Thank you so much. Now we go on to our next speaker for today, Ms. Kekashan Basu. Her topic for today will be Young Women's Perspective on Innovation for Leading Change Towards Sustainable Development and Role of Faith. And introducing her. So Ms. Basu, she is, as her topic suggests, young women. So she is Forbes under 30, and she's an iconic global influencer, educator, environmentalist, climate reality mentor, peace and sustainability campaigner, and she's spoken at over 500 United Nations and other global forums. So we are very, very happy and excited to hear from you, Ms. Basu. Please, we welcome you.
Thank you very much. And hello, everyone. First of all, happy International Women's Day. I am truly delighted to be able to share this virtual space with you on a panel of very powerful leaders. and speak about a topic that is very close to my heart. I'm from Toronto, Canada, but I'm joining you today from Ithaca, upstate New York. I'm an MBA candidate at Cornell University. So good morning from upstate New York. Now, as I mentioned, I'm speaking on a topic that I have worked on for over a decade. And throughout all of that work, we've been able to see that we're living through very tumultuous times, and we're faced with so many different challenges with complexities and of a magnitude that we haven't really seen before. And these issues can actually derail human civilization from its path of progress and actually push it towards the Armageddon. And ironically, as we all know, much of it is our doing, whether it's the anthropogenic triple planetary crisis of climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution, or the multiple war zones, be it in Ukraine or Syria or the Horn of Africa, or the ugly rise of radicalism that's quite literally tearing apart human society, or the dark side of the web that's destroying young minds and creating a generation that is increasingly entrapped in the virtual world that's bereft of social skills that set humans apart from the rest of our species. We have all of these obstacles that are human-induced. And as with literally any global issue, women and girls are the ones who are most affected. But what does give me hope is that because all of these obstacles are human-made, there is still some hope that we can find an elixir by really moving forward, leveraging the core values of compassion and of tolerance and of equality, and ensuring that this is something that becomes the cornerstone of any action that we take, which is really at the basis of all faiths, because all faiths call for this. And when we do this through an intersectional feminist lens with women at the center of all of these actions and decision making, we are able to truly move towards sustainable development and innovate for sustainable development. So before I share a bit about the work that we at Green Hope Foundation do in order to facilitate this progress, I would like to share with you a bit about my journey as a young girl and a young woman in this field before going into that. So I started my journey when I was 7 years old. And when I saw this image of a dead bird with its belly full of plastic, and this was my calling that came as a result of compassion, because I still remember how I squirmed with shock trying to fathom the bird's agony as it choked to death. And that moment of compassion for the bird's suffering spurred me to take action, because I began to realize the copious amounts of plastic that was there in our everyday lives, and realized that there was something inherently wrong with this world for causing such an innocent creature to suffer through so much pain. And it was also around the same time that I had attended a lecture by environmentalist Robert Swan, and his words, "The greatest threat to our planet is the belief that someone else will save it," resonated deeply with me. And that led me to celebrate my 8th birthday, which is actually World Environment Day, 5th June, by planting my first tree. And that marked the beginning of my journey to turn compassion and empathy into ground level actions to achieve sustainable development, and particularly feminist sustainable development. And I worked on the ground for many years. My work was then recognized by the United Nations when I was 11 years old, and I was invited to speak at my first UN conference. But my second moment of compassion came when I was 12 years old, and I was invited to speak at the Rio Plus 20 Earth Summit, which at the time was the largest sustainable development conference of our time. And there were 50,000 delegates present, but there were only 5 people under the age of 18. And I was the youngest international delegate to address a press conference, to speak at multiple events. And I remember every time I went on stage, there was always complete shock on the faces of the audience members, because I was the only child in the sea of adults. And I quite literally stood out. But this experience highlighted the tremendous lack of inclusivity in the sustainable development process. And as I began to look around, that inclusivity extended to women and girls, and particularly women from communities who were most affected by all of our world's challenges. So I decided to change this inequity, and this led to the birth of my organization, Green Hope Foundation, which was really my vehicle of change and my own metamorphosis of being able to be at the forefront of combating human apathy towards our environment, towards social causes, towards the discrimination and lack of equity. And what began as a 12-year-old girl's dream has now evolved into this global social innovation enterprise where we work across 28 countries with over 500,000 people, leveraging technology and education to drive social equity and environmental justice, empowering those whom the world has almost forgotten, and who most often happen to be women and girls. And our work has consistently put theoretical concepts into practice, implementing a feminist, intersectional, and interfaith approach, and by using innovation and localization to benefit those who are hardest hit by climate change, pollution, and biodiversity loss. So, for example, clean energy innovation is at the core of many of our solutions in these regions and communities where there is a complete absence of infrastructures, even within those communities. So the first example I'd like to share is deep inside rural Bangladesh, extremely climate vulnerable. We now operate our first school in that group of villages, the Green Hope Foundation Academy of Hope for Women and Girls, that is solar powered and provides climate resilience education to girls in the mornings and functions as a sewing school for women in the evenings, to ensure that they are able to evolve into entrepreneurs. During the pandemic, we saw just how terrible the impact was, particularly on women and girls in these vulnerable communities. And one of the main challenges was that the gap that was there in the education space, that just increased manyfold, because girls were dropping out of school much more than they were pre-pandemic. And this was more so in climate vulnerable areas. And that is why we put forward a special project, which is the solar powered mobile libraries, where we worked to address this complete collapse of the education system and of the widening chasm of inequity. The solar-powered mobile libraries taking books to the doorstep of over 300,000 out-of-school girls across countries in Asia and Africa. Similarly, we started a solar-powered computer lab to ensure that the girls in the communities who had never had access to any kind of technology had STEM education and were able to gain the necessary skill sets that would enable them to get good jobs. So this, for example, is in Liberia, in civil war-torn Liberia, with our first class of graduates from our solar-powered computer lab and academy. As part of our Women's Health Initiative, we work on sexual and reproductive health and rights and menstrual hygiene, and working to address the taboo that is often surrounding these topics, particularly in areas that are not just affected by these inequities, but also affected by climate change and biodiversity loss, so that we're truly able to address the root causes of these inequities. One of my fellow panelists spoke about the women and food and how that's intrinsically linked. That's something that we understood as well, because in a lot of the communities we worked in, women farmers often earned less than half of what the men were earning, and sometimes earned nothing at all. But their labor was seen as essential, but they weren't paid for it or given that dignity. So when we installed a very special system called agrivoltaics, the agrivoltaic technology that utilizes the dual use of land for energy and for agriculture, we made sure that the women farmers were the ones who benefited most from this because it enabled them to have greater crop yield, reducing plant and water stress and soil stress. And this ensured that the women and girls and the farmers who worked in the fields were able to practice sustainable agriculture, have a sustainable source of income, and therefore create circular bioeconomies within their own spheres of influence. And the agrivoltaic grid, they powered the solar-powered irrigation systems that then enabled the women to achieve that socioeconomic security, so ensuring human prosperity and environmental justice and addressing loss and damage of their communities. In Peru, for example, we work with indigenous women there on food security through our Grow Your Own Food campaign, where we work with them to grow these crops that they might not be able to grow in the general soil that is quite polluted in the more urban areas, but within their communities, growing these crops in order to ensure food security and their good health for the women and girls there. And this is a project that we just implemented, but it's very, very close to our hearts. This is in Kiribati, a small island developing state that is extremely vulnerable to climate change, and its islands will probably sink in the next 10 years. We just installed a solar water farm, and this is a unique technology that uses solar power to harness both rainwater and groundwater to provide clean water to the local community. So the country had previously been facing severe drought in recent years, so that had caused a decrease in rainfall. And this indigenous community had an added challenge of facing an influx of brackish water, which affected the health of the people and also their ability to practice sustainable agriculture. And the people who were most affected were the women and girls, both young women as well as elderly women. So we wanted to address this through innovation for sustainability. But what we see here is, as I mentioned right at the beginning, we leverage compassion and empathy that is espoused in every single faith around the world to work towards environmental conservation, social equity, and economic stability. There is often a misconception about how faiths are viewed in the public space or what role faith has in sustainable development. And a lot of that has to do with the radicalization that is often present. But the basis of every single faith is that we have compassion towards our fellow human being and towards our Mother Earth. And a lot of that compassion and empathy stems from the women and girls and how women and girls are portrayed in all of these faiths. And that is something that we work to leverage as well, working towards the preservation of our Mother Earth through that empathy and through that compassion that is espoused in all of our respective faiths. And that is why it is so important for all of us to adopt this feminist, intersectional, empathetic approach to innovating towards sustainable development, because it is absolutely essential that we recognize why it's so important that we don't leave behind one half of humanity. Instead, we join hands and work together to take actions to create a sustainable world where no one is left behind, and most importantly, where no woman, no girl is left behind, so that we can truly empower women and girls in all of our diversity. Thank you.
Wow, amazing. Thank you, Ms. Basu. I was listening, I was very hooked on to your talk, and I was just thinking how a beautiful girl with a beautiful heart brought this beautiful change. But I'm deeply impacted that how thoughtful you were, and from such a young age. So thank you so much for your talk. That brings me to my question, because even you have to leave early for your commitment. So the question is, what is Gen Z women leaders' vision of a sustainable world, and how do we bridge the intergenerational gap on this vision and action?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think that is a very relevant question. I think for us as Gen Z women, I think one advantage that we do have is we do have a lot more tools and resources that are available to us in some parts of the world that enable us to be more aware of our rights, and therefore we kind of know what we want in terms of creating a sustainable world. And what I have seen working with other girls and women my age and even younger is that we want to create a world where no one is left behind, where everyone has a life of dignity. And we want to work with every single stakeholder who has knowledge and expertise and experience in these areas in order to truly create that sustainable world. And that is where intergenerational solidarity comes in. And I think that in the feminist movement, in the women's rights movement, intergenerational solidarity is something that has been there for a very, very long time, where the knowledge is passed on through the generations of women and girls in order to create these sustainable, peaceful societies. And what we as Gen Z women want is really no different in that aspect, because we want to be able to learn from the wisdom and the experiences of the women who came before us, who lived through these very challenges that some of us might be facing now, and ensuring that our next generations don't go through the same challenges or face the same challenges that we face today. And that is why we want to be able to have these dialogues, have panels and talks, and really ensure that that intergenerational discussion then turns into ground level actions. That is something I feel that working with my team at Green Hope Foundation, with an organization composed primarily of young women from around the world, that we are focusing a lot on the action part of it. I think that for a long time, because a lot of our dialogues have been led by men, there has been a lot of talk and not enough action. And we want to be able to leverage that intergenerational solidarity with women and girls and all of our diversity from all around the world to turn all of that talk into action. So really adopting an action-oriented approach towards feminist sustainable development and continuing with the intergenerational solidarity that has been present in the feminist movement for such a long time.
Thank you. I think you're very right. It's a two-way thing. Like girls and women of this age can, they are more empowered to use the tools and all the digital devices and digital tools, technologies as well, while the women of other generations, they can empower girls of this generation from their wisdom and experience. Thank you so much, Ms. Basu. Your talk was truly very inspiring. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
We go on to our next speaker. We have Miss Rukmini Walker. She is going to present on the topic on Hindu perspective on spirituality as foundation for right blend of intention and intuition of feminine heart, paving path for sustainable development. A brief introduction about her. Ms. Rukmini Walker, we know her. She is, I know her personally when, with the term Urban Devi, when Urban Devi comes into my mind. So she's an activist in women's spiritual empowerment. She is also based out of Bhakti Center in New York City, where she's a member of the board of directors. Ms. Walker, she's also featured in a film called Women of Bhakti. And she writes and teaches and leads workshops and retreats internationally. We warmly welcome you, Ms. Rukmini Walker. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor to be with all of you. Powerful voices and activists. Thank you so much. In my experience, authentic spirituality of whatever tradition, every tradition empowers us as women and empowers all people with a vision to see the interconnectivity of everyone and to act accordingly. Lord Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita, the well-known sacred text of India, that one who is wise sees the same vibrant spirit essence or soul animating every individual living being. And this includes all human beings, and even the animals, the trees, the plants, and the aquatics. I was so moved to see that picture of the bird. Oh, my goodness, the picture of the bird with the belly filled with plastics. How heartbreaking. Yeah. So Every bird, every living being is as beloved to the Supreme Lord as I am, or as you are. And this kind of inclusive vision of interconnectivity impels each of us to act in the world with an expanded worldview, with interests not confined to my own country, ethnic community, race, gender, or religious bias. When we act from a place of awakened compassion and empathy, feeling the pains and pleasures of others as our very own. So I think there's a stereotype about Hindu women that we are passive, silent sufferers of our destiny, even if it brings discrimination and abuse. But in fact, exemplary spiritual awakened women of many faiths, both today and in the past, have stood up to injustice and spoken truth to power. Sita Devi called out Ravana as he attempted to seduce her. Draupadi called out the revered Bhishma Dev for not upholding righteous dharma. The brilliant Gargi called out the sage Yajnavalkya when she defeated him in debate in the court of King Janaka. So that was ancient times, right? So today as well, there are empowered women who are not afraid to speak truth to power. In fact, when the voices of women are silenced, it opens the door for children and women themselves to be abused. When 51% of the voices of our world, the voices of the women, are not empowered, we impoverish our cultures and our world. Today, women excel in every field, including science, technology, engineering, and math. But often extraordinary women in the top of their fields do their work differently and perhaps better than men, with more empathy, more deep listening, more EQ or emotional intelligence, and often in a mood of servant leadership, uplifting the world, as many of these women have uplifted their own children, sometimes as single moms, often despite great hardship. I want to tell you about one such woman. She was not a leader in any groundbreaking research or STEM technology. She was a simple, uneducated woman from a small village in Maharashtra in India. She died last year at the age of 73, but she graced our world as a living example of what it means to be an extraordinary human being. Sindhu Tai Saptal was married to a man 20 years her senior. When she was 19, she already had 2 children and was pregnant with her 3rd. A man in her village was sexually abusing women there, and Sindhu Tai went to the police as a whistleblower. The abusive man, out of revenge, told Sindhu Tai's husband that the child she was carrying was his and not her husband's child. Her ignorant husband became furious and beat her to unconsciousness, and then threw her into a cowshed to make it appear as though she'd been trampled to death by the cows. But a compassionate cow, being a mother herself, stood over Sindhu Tai and protected her as she gave birth to her daughter alone in that cow pen. Sindhu Tai cut the umbilical cord herself with a sharp rock that was lying on the ground nearby. Such an amazing story, yeah? And then later, she wandered alone and felt completely unwanted with her newborn baby. As she stood near a rail station, she contemplated suicide and thought to throw herself and her baby before an oncoming train. She sat down to rest under the shade of a tree, feeling lost and dejected. As she looked up, she noticed that the tree had one broken branch above her, just dangling by a thread. And she thought, I am also broken, like the branch of this tree. But this tree, although it's broken, is giving me shade. Like this tree, I can also do something to relieve the pain of others. So she walked back to the rail station where she noticed an old man who was crying out from thirst. She gave him water to relieve his suffering. Over time, she began to gather orphan children and care for them as her own. Then she began to receive compassionate donations from well-wishers, and gradually she opened several orphanages. And eventually she became known as the mother of the orphans. After some years, her former husband came to one of her orphanages. He was destitute and he asked for her help. She told him that she had only one relationship with others now, that of a mother. And if he wanted to come and live there as one of her children, she would accept him. And then later, when people would come to tour her children's home, she would introduce her former husband to them, saying, "This is my oldest child, and he is a very bad child." So Sindhutai rechanneled her experience of abuse in her own life to serve those most in need, without discrimination and without any malice. So I think we can all be inspired by her example and also pay it forward. Whatever God-given gifts we've received, whatever empowerment we've been given, it can also be redirected and mobilized to serve others and the world around us. Thank you all very, very much.
Thank you, Ms. Rukmini Walker. Thank you so much for, I was just reflecting on every time I hear about Sindhutai's story, it just warms my heart. She was alone, but yet she gave a new life to more than 2,500 orphans. Thank you for bringing out her example and also important lessons of empowered women from Bhagavad Gita, which is our ancient text. Thank you so much. It was very heartwarming and inspiring talk, how women can make changes, even outside, how physically a hurt woman can be, but she can just move mountains. So thank you so much for your talk. We'll take all the questions now towards the end. Let's go on to our next speaker. Our next speaker for today is Miss Ruby Gillian. Her topic for today is Digital Technology-Led Innovation Empowering Women and Children to Overcome Abuse. Such an important topic. Let me just take a minute to introduce Ruby Gillian. She is the recipient of United States of America, the White House President's Lifetime Achievement Award from President Biden. She is a technologist, fatal and severe child abuse violence technologist. She's family child advocate for the reduction of fatal child abuse and family violence. And please warmly welcome Miss Ruby Gillian. We are very, very excited to hear about your pertinent topic. Thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting me in this space. I'm very grateful and very honored. The previous speaker made me think a lot about my topic relating to child abuse. I've been assigned over 6,000 children, but I deal with fatal and severe child abuse, violence against women that get murdered because of domestic violence. So give you context, LA County has 88 cities, and I respond to all 88 cities. The police, fire, EMT, hospitals, and ER. Whenever a child dies, a woman dies of violence, that's my response. And I've been doing it for years. So I truly understand violence at the granular level. And I also understand when women call out for help and no one responds. I've had cases where women called out for help by law enforcement and they take their time to respond, and sometimes too late. And then I get called. Then I ask those questions. What happened? I called 911 and they didn't show up. So I'm in that space. And so I do, sometimes I don't want to share that's my work because it's too gritty. It's too harsh. But yet, how do we resolve it? We don't talk about it, right? You can't solve a problem if you don't talk about it, if you don't share, if you don't try to engage with the people that have the problems in the first place, right? So as relates to our topic, the CSW67 theme is innovation, technology, change, and education in the digital age for achieving gender equity and empowerment of all women and all girls. So the word is empowerment. For me, empowerment also means the use of technology for advocacy, social justice, and peace, which cannot be biased, it cannot be hurtful, it cannot be exploitive, or objectification, right? Because when you build technologies and you do not see its biased implications, you're going to objectify your victims, you're going to objectify the users, and that's going to cause bias in your data. The reason why I say data as an emphasis, because data creates policy, creates regulation. So if you have biases in your data samples and it's skewed for one particular population without supporting women or children, what does that say about your policies? Right? So in the field of child abuse, we have multi-channel communication systems and data management processes. I'm in the field. I have to use these technologies. 50% don't work to my need. Literally, sometimes I've used these applications and they're pointless because the people designing these technologies have no concept of women of violence, have no concept when a woman is poor and has children at the home. So in that context, what I saw is when COVID came, coronavirus came, and then you have conflicts. The amount of violence skyrocketed. And COVID really created a digital divide because women and children had lack of technology. And by doing so, they had lack of resources, lack of knowledge and education, and limited contacts because they couldn't contact the folks. So, in LA County, we were talking about, oh, we have technology, but the tech companies would jock the lines. So by jocking the lines, meaning they would minimize access through the internet by beefing up the channels in such a way that people wouldn't have access to it. And that was very common. So in general, my strategy now is what I'm doing is through my work is looking at technologies from the empowerment process through fatal child abuse. So I have research teams in California and research teams in Florida where we maximize the value of our work from a first responders perspective, and how do we use technologies for the first responders perspective to be more active, more agile, more responsive to women and children. That's what I'm doing. And I'm really excited about my work. And the other work that I have is also restorative justice and how do we get vulnerable populations out of jail and connect them to resources and ensure their process from beginning to end to succeed and to complete the requirements of the court, which is also a digital platform that we're developing. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Ruby Gillian. From your talk, I feel everyone deserves a relationship free from domestic violence, but it's so devastatingly pervasive. Thank you for bringing out this very important topic. So many, 1 in 3 women experience some form of physical violence, and 1 in 7 women, I was just checking the statistics, have been injured by an intimate partner. So thank you for bringing out this important topic. It's something for us to think upon, and also thank you for your work on bridging this gap, digital divide gap, so that help can be there for these women. Everybody can be very agile in helping these women. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your topic for today. Let's go on to our next speaker for today, Miss Anita Lodge. She is, I warmly welcome Miss Anita Lodge. She'll be speaking on Brahmakumaris' perspective of women of faith-led innovation for sustainable development. Brahmakumaris is also co-hosting this event, so I deeply thank you, Ms. Anita Lodge. She is an R&D coordinator at India One Solar Theme Power Plant. She is director of Brahmakumaris, Poland, and she is the member of Global BK Brahmakumaris Environment Initiative and Brahmakumaris World Spiritual University, India. I warmly welcome you, Ms. Anita Lodge. Thank you.
Greetings of peace to all my wonderful sisters and to everyone who is watching us online. And I'm really very honored and privileged to be part of this very powerful discussion. Thank you for this opportunity. And yes, as the topic was presented, I would like to share the work and also the basis of any actions that we take in Brahmakumaris. Brahmakumaris is the international NGO, and we are committed to personal transformation and then to co-creation of the sustainable, peaceful, harmonious world through that. So we do it via spiritual values, via innovation, but innovation that is inside out. So it's responsible innovation and also benevolent and compassionate actions. And I'm very happy to represent Brahmakumaris because probably it's the biggest or one of the largest spiritual organizations where are men and women, but it is run by women since the beginning. For the last almost 90 years, the founder had this vision and he created this legacy of women empowerment. And at that time, almost 90 years ago, the young children who came, they became women of faith, and then they became spiritual leaders. And this was all thanks to the inner journey, thanks to discovering their faith in themselves, their highest potential, and they were able to gain power. No, they took power from the source, from the divine, so they were able to live this highest potential and to share it with everyone else and to inspire everyone to tap to their highest potential. So these women of faith, they were leading our organization, and the leadership is based on love, but also on courage, is based on compassion, is based on determination, and they are all united in one vision of the peaceful and loveful world. So commitment to unity and harmony is one of the characteristics of this leadership. And today I would like to present two of our sisters, elder sisters, who were instrumental in many innovations, inside-out innovations, which are very important for sustainable future, and who also inspired thousands or maybe millions of people to live in a more sustainable way, here and now. So one of them is Dadi Prakashmani. She was a woman whom the founder entrusted everything. After his death, she became spiritual and administrative head of the Brahmakumaris, and for 40 years she was doing that. And under her leadership, this Brahmakumaris, which was a small Indian-based organization, grew into global organization. So today we are present in more than 120 countries, and there are more than 1 million of regular students and about 46,000 of dedicated sisters throughout the whole world who are touching the hearts and minds of so many people. And her leadership style was again based on her being an instrument of the divine, and her love, her self-respect and respect for everyone else. And in this way, she was able to conquer the hearts of everyone. She was really a friend of those, 40,000 of sisters who dedicated their lives at her lifetime. She knew, I think, most of them by name, and she also knew so many of the students of the Brahmakumaris. So in this way, thanks to this feeling of belonging and the trust, she was instrumental again in building the community of people who live in a sustainable way. And I can say that this 1 million of regular students, yeah, now we carry this legacy and we do our best to live in a way that is not harmful to planet, but actually contributes to bringing the harmony back. So we are all vegetarian, at least now more and more plant-based diet is practiced by us. And this is the single best thing that can be done by an individual to help our Mother Earth. Then we practice a simple lifestyle. We really try not to take too much comfort and contentment from material things, but rather we go inside and we explore our inner treasures. And then whatever we learn, whatever we gain, we do our best to share it generously. And this is all based on daily practice of meditation and exploring spiritual knowledge. So under the leadership of Dadi Prakashmani, Brahmakumaris became also a pioneer in research and development in renewable energies field in India. So that was in mid-90s, last century. And probably we were also maybe the first spiritual organization that got good funds, grants from the governments, Indian and German government, to do some technical research. And that concluded in developing new systems for solar steam cooking. And that was the first system, which was built in Gyansarovar in one of our ashrams in Mount Abu in 1996. And then in 1999, it became even bigger installation in another ashram, also in Abu Road. And this system is working up today, and we can cook up to 35,000 meals a day. So we are using really this clean and renewable energy for the benefit of many. And then we share it, because whatever we do it for humanity and for the nature. So now there are many organizations that are using this technology for their benefit. And this was possible because of Dadiji vision. Her leadership was based on a long-term objective to create this beautiful, just, and peaceful, harmonious world. So she was not limited by any short-term objectives or aims, but she always looked ahead. And actually, she was the first one who was innovating with newness in herself. Every day, she would look for some new ways to expand her consciousness in the laboratory of her mind. And this made her conclude that it is power of silence that is prior to power of science, that only spirituality and technology, when they go together, they can really create meaningful, responsible technological solutions. So this was the foundation for all this development in renewable energy area. And she was always very open and very positive. She trusted anyone, and she encouraged everyone to try newness, to experiment on small level and then bring it up. So this was our Dadi Prakashmani ji. But then when she left, the main person became Dadi Janki. And Dadi Janki was also with the organization since the beginning, since she was a very young girl. And she was our mentor, she was our elder sister, and she was a word server. She was very courageous, and her leadership was not based on any position, but really on this spiritual credibility that she built herself because of her faith in the truth, her faith in herself, her faith in God, and her faith in others. So whenever we spoke about something new, about cooperation, about development, she was saying that we have to check our intentions, that we have to have pure feelings and elevated intentions as the beginning. Then there has to be faith in God. Then things become unlimited. Then when we trust others and we communicate clearly, we include everyone. And then it will become a meaningful innovation. So really her faith in God and her faith in us and her enthusiasm and her love was the foundation for something what seemed to be impossible, but became possible. And I'm speaking about, again, renewable energy field. So she was really our mentor in the project which we called India One Solar Thermal Power Plant. It is a research and development project. And again, under the leadership of Dadi Janki, this time, we were able to develop an indigenous, innovative technology which allows for power generation from the sun for 24 hours a day. And yeah, as far as I know, this is the only solar power plant that is able to do it still today in the whole world. But it's all was possible again because of this compassionate view and power of determination that came from inside out. And then Daddy was really a role model for all of us. You know, she left the body. She died just in 2020 when she was 104 years young. And she was world server till the end. So when we used to ask Daddy, how come? From where do you take this power, this motivation? How come you are able to do it? So she would always reply, it's because I have never in my life wasted any thought, any second, any breath. So this was one of her mottos, to use everything in a worthwhile way. And this was also relevant for the matter, for the nature. She had very great regard for Mother Nature. And even in small things, we could see it, how authentic it was. For example, she would always use the cloth handkerchief, never the paper tissue, just not to waste anything unnecessary. So this was our Dadiji, not only inspiration, but really a sample for all of us. And her legacy continues. So just to conclude, I am convinced because I have seen it and I'm living it, that if we want to bring peace into the world and harmony to the nature and to live in harmony with nature, these are for sure women of faith who can lead us there because of their clean and generous heart, because of their far-sighted and unlimited intellect, because of their authority of spirituality, power that they gain, and because of their common aim to bring benefit to everyone and everything. So thank you very much for opportunity to share those few examples and thoughts. Om Shanti, greetings of peace. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Anita Lodge. So much admiration for Dadi Prakashmani and Dadi Janki. I think they are pioneer for all women, and how their purity and peace and so much higher consciousness, actually using that we can use technology for achieving sustainable development goals through the lens of these values. So thank you for bringing out their examples, and thank you for bringing out so much bliss, power, and love through your talk as well. Thank you again.
Thank you.
We'll move on to our next speaker for today, Miss Kukumina Pradhan. She'll be presenting on the topic, Women Leaders' Role Driving Innovation in Digital Technologies for Building Sustainable World. Ms. Pradhan is Director and Business Analytics and Product Management at Data Labs, Capital One India, and she's the co-founder of EnglishOnPhone.com. Very excited to hear from you, Ms. Pradhan. We welcome you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for making me a part of this panel. I feel so humbled. I mean, all of you are such accomplished leaders in your space, and truly, I have no qualification to be speaking on this topic of sustainability. And all I have is that I have worked in the industry of technology, and tried to lead teams. And through these experiences, I would try to share some of my perspectives in this space. And truly thankful to Dr. Aditi for inviting me for this panel and share my thoughts. So I will share a short presentation to guide through this conversation. I'll share my screen now. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. So I'll begin with a story. So last month, I got an opportunity to meet Priya, and she had recently relocated from London. She was in London for about 5 years, and she moved to Bangalore with her family. And she was raising a small toddler, as the needs of the child are a lot. So she ended up doing a lot of shopping online in the malls for things like toys and pram and, car seat, typical things, right? The retail industry in India is booming, right? Especially in urban cities, there is no shortage of options. And there were plenty of options for her. But Priya was looking at all this growth and, she was saying, is this growth in the right direction? She was used to a very, very organized, pre-loved marketplace in London. And she found that the concepts of recycling, upcycling, reuse, all that is very highly organized around her. She was a cloud engineer by profession, but her passion for creating a sustainable world around her, for her daughter and the future generation for her daughter, was very overpowering. So she quit her job, and then she spent a few months in creating this platform. And now, since last 11 months, her platform is running. She didn't have any experience in the fashion, technology, or operations or retail industry, but she knew technology, and then she leveraged that to create this marketplace. And it's already gained much traction in many households. And the reason why I shared the story is it is actually the essence of my topic today, which is women's leaders' role in driving innovation, leveraging technology for building a sustainable world. So, she shared my introduction. I have been in this analytics world for the last 18 years. But very recently, like about a few years ago, I have started kind of taking a deep interest in sustainability and trying to leverage technology to create change. And Anita ma'am shared about this journey, right? Like where we practice, we introduce certain practices in our lifestyles that are difficult, but when we take them, it creates harmony, right? Like vegetarianism, simple living. All these are practices that day to day that we take, and then slowly it adds up. So what currently we are trying to build is a solution that can help individuals to measure their sustainability footprint. And, Ms. Ruby also talked about leveraging data to influence policies. This is actually in another application of leveraging data is to make people aware, right? Like every day we make choices. Every day in terms of what we eat, where we purchase things, what kind of energy consumptions, what are our lifestyle choices. And that data is available, but it is not leveraged in a way to create that awareness. And when we become conscious of these lifestyle choices and it adds up to a sustainability footprint, then we believe that these small changes will come, right? And, consciousness is a very important concept. Like, all of us followers of Srila Prabhupada, we try to become Krishna conscious. And then, if you want to do it at a mass scale where everybody becomes conscious of the sustainability impact that they have, I think that will drive some change. So it's a very fledgling idea right now. We are a team of a few technologists who are trying to build a solution, a platform, and later in this year, we will pilot it. But I wanted to decode some of the principles that have helped me in this journey of being a woman leader in this space. So I will just share 3 aspects, like deconstructing the role in 3 steps, right? The first thing which our role could be is create a favorable ecosystem. The second is like problem solving, right? All these issues that we are facing, and all of you kind of explained through your various examples that, how we've solved such challenging problems. And finally, create new opportunities for innovation. So like new frontiers actually, right? So these three things are important aspects of a women leader's role. And then I'll take a couple of slides for each of this, share an example, and then decode some of the principles. And the first one is creating a favorable ecosystem. So, I came across this image, and if you just stare at this image, you'll realize that, she's a lady in India, driving an auto rickshaw. It's a man's world there, right? And which is not a man's world. The entire working professional life around us is a man's world, right? But look at the smile in her face and the smile in the face of the two ladies behind her, right? So not only she's leading, but she's able to kind of transfer that happiness around to other women as well, right? The sense of empowerment. So, my journey started in Canada when I joined Capital One. And like every other professional industry, there was a very, very small percentage of women in my company as well, right? So I was in a room, typically in meetings where there were 30 men and I was the only female, and it was tough, right? To make my voice heard, to kind of share a viewpoint, to challenge a particular perspective. It was really challenging. And then we had a senior director, she actually made efforts to create this ecosystem for us, right? A mentorship program for us where, she focused on the right kind of skills that we need to build. She focused on giving us access to the right kind of support, provided us visibility. And all these things helped us, to survive in that man's world, right? And today, when I am in India, I have a similar set of thing, right? Like I have a few women who are in my team, and then I try to kind of transfer that kind of experiences that I had when I was growing up as a professional to them, right? So this was my personal journey. And through that, what I decoded is that if we are good role models, that, we can empower others, we help them to develop the right kind of skills in the relevant world that we are operating in, it will help us establish the equity, right? It's not about equality, it is about equity. And hence, we as women leaders need to constantly remind us that how to establish that equity. So this was my first kind of first section. Second one is about solving challenging problems. And, I took the example of Christiana. Everybody is familiar with her work in the Paris Agreement. And what I found by reading her story is her role in, the international efforts to, create that climate change agreement, right? She's a very skilled negotiator and a consensus builder. And she was able to bring together very diverse set of perspectives towards a common goal. And it's something that is very inherent in women, right? We bring in perspectives to problem solving that leads to better solution. So she was faced with these diverse set of countries, right? With developing countries, developed countries, and everybody had different challenges that they're working through, and bringing all of them together to a common solution is incredible, right? And so what kind of we learn from women leaders and from this example is that we bring in like unique perspectives and approaches to problem solving. And the first and foremost, and many of us talked about, in fact, Ms. Basu talked about it quite a lot, which was collaboration. And our style and leadership style is very collaborative, wherein we seek everybody's perspective, right? We try to bring in inclusion. And what helps when you bring in inclusion, you foster an environment everybody can speak. You never know where the solution will pop up from, right? And that's what we've seen in studies after studies, that how women leaders become very successful in solving problems. So that was the second aspect of the role. And then the third aspect is creating new frontiers. And for that, I picked an example, very, very niche example. I don't know whether you might have heard of Dr. Maria. She is in the space of creating vanadium redox flow batteries, right? And when I was reading about her story, it's interesting that when she was growing up, she was not interested in math or engineering at all. And people around her said, give it a try, right? You might do well in it. And she was very reluctant. She wanted to take humanities where her interests were in English. And but you know, some people who were really really her champions said that no, you will do well in math and just give it a try in your undergrad. And so she did, and then surprisingly, she did very well, and then that went on, taking engineering, chemical engineering, and then while doing all this, she realized that there was this opportunity in the sustainability space, that the batteries that we have currently today are not going to be useful in the future world as much as, because of the size of the battery. When the size of the battery increases, the cost increases, and it's not really as sustainable as we would like it to be in 2050. So she pioneered this research, and they now use liquid electrolyte to store the energy, and that actually significantly reduces the size of the battery size, and then that has really created a lot of advancement in this space. So, if we think back from where she started and where she is today, that journey, nobody knew that she would actually create a new frontier in this energy space where we really need such kind of innovation. So what we can decode from that is like the purpose that we have in life, right? What is the purpose driving? And women tend to have a very, very strong purpose-driven approach, right? Long-term thinking. So what happens in decision-making when most women, they will take a longer perspective in mind to take a decision, and that helps to take the right decision for the environment, right? And they tend to be very resilient, so there might be challenges. So, through these challenges, women are able to navigate through much more easily. So, that's how women leaders can, play a very crucial role in driving innovation and leveraging technology to build this sustainable world. So I'll stop here. Thank you so much for giving me a patient hearing.
Thank you so much, Ms. Pradhan. It was a very enlightening talk. Actually, having my roots from India, it gave me so much joy to see the women in the three-wheeler driving and as well as riding. That was very, very nice and fresh perspective. And I think I truly echo what you said. Having female leaders in positions of influence to serve as role models doesn't only help their career advancement, but also stands to generate broader societal impacts. Thank you for what you're doing in this digital technology space for empathetic and inclusive development. Thank you, Ms. Pradhan. We move on to our next speaker, Ms. Neha Ainapure, and her topic for today is Young Women Research Scholars' Perspective on Mentoring Experiences of Intersectional Workforce within Innovation-Led Knowledge Intensive. And a bit about Ms. Neha. She is a Boston-based researcher and a lifelong learner. She currently works as a senior scientist, and with years of experience across different organizations, she is always motivated to bring her contributions to the field of innovation. And she has a perfect blend of spirituality and science, and now she wants to offer the solutions to all these critical issues. We warmly welcome you, Ms. Neha. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ankita, and thank you so much, Dr. Aditi, for having me on this panel. It's been truly joyful, and I'm very, very inspired by all of the talks that we have had since morning. I've been drawing some of the takeaways from each of the talks, and I feel that it is so amazing that my topic is connecting to all of the takeaways that we have heard since morning. And so for the same reason, now being in the space of science, technology, engineering, and management, serving as a scientist for one of the corporates here in Boston gives me an immense pleasure to moving or directing my research in learning, mentoring experiences within these knowledge-intensive industries, and specifically how women are being mentored, or whether they are being, and what are some of the benefits and challenges that they see. Not sure if my screen is visible.
Not yet.
Okay. Is it still showing up or?
Not yet. We made you the co-host. Let me know if you can share or.
Sure. If not, I can just move ahead with my presentation. So here I really talk about how knowledge intensive industries that we have seen in previous presentations, science, technology, and engineering and management, so valued in our current era, just because of the flexibility, the amount of knowledge that the industry brings in to enable and to allow to bring ease of information or access, that information and use it for benefit, for society's benefit. Now, that being said, this particular field contributes to about 69% of total US GDP, which is huge, and about $2.3 trillion in federal taxes revenues. And this is a recent data that we know. That being said, STEM industries have core component to it, and which is called as tacit knowledge. One of the first presenters that talked about that women exactly knows how much of salt to add in the food, how much of things to be, should be given out in terms of the real world or corporate world. They just know it, and it comes to them intuitively. It comes to them through experiences. One of the other presenters, Ms. Basu, talked about that, there's a long road for us to learn from our previous leaders, women leaders, take their experiences and build something bigger on that path that, all of us as women, we are. So that being said, the core component that STEM industries revolve around is called as tacit knowledge. This specific set of knowledge is dependent on individuals' experiences, their intuitions, belief system, and impressions, their past impressions, their experiences that they have gone through in their journeys. However, it's so very difficult to codify and verbalize these experiences, unlike the other types of knowledge, which are also called as implicit knowledge or explicit knowledge per se. And that is why STEM industry is so rich in terms of research and development. They revolve around all of these impressions, intuitions, internalize all of these knowledge or the patterns, and then combine. All of the patterns are then combined to bring in new set of information for us to create. So we have new technologies. We have just gone through a horrific pandemic situation wherein that it has disturbed so many lives of people across the nation. Miss Ruby was talking about how COVID have impacted women, child abuse. They saw high rate of violence that was created because there was a division in technology, or division in digital world because of COVID or pandemic impacts. So all of this is very important to create knowledge to come out of situations like this, and which we did. There were vaccines which were rapidly being, brought to our attentions. They were implemented across the nations and given to massive amount of people. There were different R&D companies, industries trying to figure out what best ways we could prevent this, pandemic-like situation. So with all of that, we know that STEM industries are highly diverse because it is a need. Every single section, every diverse population brings in their own information set or their tacit knowledge, which when combined can then be utilized for bigger purposes, right? So that being said, we see about 9% of Black, 8% of Hispanic, 13% of Asian, and 67% of white population contributing to STEM jobs today. Within that, we are now going to divide how many of them are women. And it gives me immense pleasure to say that about 74% of women contribute to health-related jobs, life sciences, math, physical sciences. Now, that being said, out of that, 50% of them work in all of these core industries. However, their representation is not much. Even though we see that there is increase in women participations or contributors in STEM industries all across nations or globally, their representation is not so very well out there. There was a recent article that was published and that came out, and that said that, you know, we are very proud to announce about more than 10% of women leaders are contributors who are CEOs and CFOs are at executive levels, and which have surpassed the number which was there previously until 2021. However, the gap is still very big, and that's where a double whammy effect plays a role. The intersectionality within those 10%, how many of them are diverse, how many of them belong to certain minority populations? The number then goes down, you know, drastically. One of the major reasons in understanding this situation is that the industries, corporate, have been traditionally male oriented. Women entered the workforce much later on. That allowed them to then access certain industries, you know, work towards it. However, because very less number of female mentors out there in the world to guide specific female CEOs or leaders to go and build companies, lead certain organizations was so less, it's still a struggle. And then talking about racial, different cultural backgrounds, ethnicity, it's even very difficult in those populations. So that being said, if mentorship is accessible and is served in much better platforms, much widely implemented for women leaders, it can definitely help us, you know, growing that number from 10% to 20 and to 50, and then we know more than that. Talking about mentors and women, we have seen that traditionally, like, you know, the corporate have been a male-dominated society, and, you know, women enter the workforce much later. However, they were very assertive in finding mentors and right connections to make their way up. One of the reasons being very hardworking, they had the capacity to empathize with the situation. Third, the ability to internalize new knowledge was quick. The grasping capacity of a woman is complete, you know, is different than that of how male works, and that really helped them. In all of those situations, we still see that women still feel comfortable having female mentors, and see that the satisfactory relationship between women and women mentor-mentee relationships are very high. Some of the research does show that a mixed gender dyads, so which means a mixed gender mentoring relationship, does have benefits. However, it also comes with different challenges. So moving on, talking about not just the gender, but also race. Race can also have high impact on how women actually see, you know, certain roles. Just because when they are leading certain organizations, they are coming from different cultures. Just like how tacit knowledge is very much influential by their culture, I belong to one particular culture, and so each one of you over, you know, here you do. You know that your culture has something unique to offer to this world. You know, we were talking about, we were listening from Miss Anita, you know, who's representing from Brahmakumaris, and she talked about women's longevity. You know, one of the leaders from Brahmakumaris, you know, she had so much passion to serve the country, the people. And, you know, all of those unique modalities or unique nuances that each race brings in or culture brings in is very valuable. Now, that being said, cross-racial mentorship for women have seen both the sides, challenges as well as benefits. Benefits because when you have different cultural mentoring relationships, you actually see that you're benefiting from the nuances of the new knowledge that you're learning. Then you're going to go back and implement that in the real world situation. However, accessing those information or that tacit knowledge is just so very difficult, because if I have language barrier, if I just don't know how, you know, me as a person, and if I'm, say, suppose I'm talking to Dr. Aditi, or I'm talking to Anita, you know, they have a different way of looking at things and perspectives, and they're trying to explain, it's completely going to be different. The equation just does not really match, and it takes time. So that's where some of the challenges and benefits play a role. Moving on, the research gap that we have with all of the evidence base that we have seen in the past is that intersection or the diversity in multiple mentor matching processes, specifically for women leaders, is underexplored. Second, the impact of some of the mentoring theories, because they were traditionally designed for male-oriented societies, are very less for female leaders who come from different backgrounds. The relationship between mentors and mentees who come from different cultural backgrounds, different gender, is again a question of how can we address those questions to bring in more knowledge, more leaders out in the world who are representing different cultures, minorities, tribals, so many more across the nations. So with all of the contradictory findings that we have seen in the past, some of my research questions that have allowed me to work on or direct my journey is one, to understand how interracial mentoring within KIIs, so knowledge intensive industries, are formed. What are some of the benefits or challenges of these relationships? How do women actually access these relationships? The other is what are some of the challenges in interracial, intergender mentoring relationships? And overall, we have, I've seen through all of the talks that we have had since morning, that all of us are here to serve. Seva is very important, and every single women leader, or leaders for that matter, are here to serve. And that's why it makes it very important to understand how better we can do now that we see a lot of women directing their research, their work in corporate and making an impact globally. So that being said, for my research, we are trying to study different sets of models. So wherein we have women leaders who have different gender mentors coming from completely different racial backgrounds as well as same backgrounds, and how will that difference make an impact? So for example, I come from Asian background. If I have an Asian female mentor, how will I be able to access that information to make an impact on a global level and internalize all of that information to create research like, what we saw for Kathleen Carrico, who is one of the contributors to mRNA technology, off of which vaccines were developed or designed recently and implemented, which is a huge contribution. Nobody thought about that. Second, Dr. Emanuela and Dr. Dodna, who shared Nobel Prize recently 2 years ago for their CRISPR-Cas9 technology, which is immense. This can save millions and billions of kids' life, entire population per se, who are suffering from genetic disorders, other disorders. And all of these tools are very, very important for us to progress fast and speedy progress. So that brings me to my conclusion slide that really talks about why I'm exploring mentoring within knowledge-intensive industries and how we can take all of the experience that we have had since morning and add more to this platform. Is my research. I've done some preliminary work that really talks about some of the positive and negative impacts of mentoring relationships that people see in corporate world, and how they internalize this education to be better person, not just as a leaders, but at a very individual level, because every single person who walks into corporate has their own role besides just being employee to play and impact millions and billions of people or their co-workers. Women, from the point that they were being left out to making their own way to success and now leading organizations, it is very important for us to understand how we can take all of these little nuances that we have studied in understanding the mechanism of tacit knowledge transfer through mentoring in science, technology, engineering, and management to make global impact. And I think that's why it is very crucial to understand diversity, knowledge transfer, and people who are ready to help all of the newbies who are trying to enter the workforce through mentoring. So that's up for my topic, and thank you so very much for listening to me. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Ms. Neha. A very, very relevant topic about STEM industry and how, you know, we can help this gender disparity in STEM for all the women and girls in science. And I particularly very much liked how we can create, you can create a knowledge sharing culture and also encourage social interaction. But yes, just bridging the gap and developing this non-competitive atmosphere and implementing a mentoring philosophy. Thank you so much for your very, very amazing talk. It was very, 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 very enlightening. Thank you again.
Thank you.
I now call Dr. Aditi Mishal. She's our last but not the least speaker for today. She's from our organizer team, and she is the one who has invited all this impactful and distinguished speakers for today. Her topic is action model of faith-based blend of intent and intuitions leading responsible innovation for sustainable development. Dr. Aditi is a Chief Sustainability Officer and Dean for Educational Initiatives at Govardhan Ecovillage. She's a UN representative and also works for ISKCON, and she is an Honorary Director for Strategy and Research and Policy, Dr. Ambedkar. Thank you so much, Dr. Aditi. We look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you so much, Ankita. And I'm sure, I'll be resonating the voice of all of the audience who have been, with us for the live event, that it is worth the time. It has been an amazing, enlightening journey today. And each one of the speakers have brought tremendous contribution to responsible innovation and sustainable world, and it's an honor to have hosted all of them. And I'm happy to share, something from my side in regards with the topic, and particularly presenting it from the point of view of faith-based innovation, faith-based, thought leading to innovation. So these are just few glimpses from the United Nations headquarters, New York. I thought I'll share with you. This is the famous General Assembly at UN headquarters. And this is my pic with it. This is at the SDG famous selfie point. And, the previous women contributors who have been contributing to United Nations. UN has ensured that they put up the pictures of these contributors, and you can take a selfie with them. So, and this is, of course, at the famous place where you see displayed all of the, flags of the nations at the United Nations. So when we say win, what does it come to your mind? W-I-N. So for me, what it resonates with is women in innovation. Yeah. So with win, definitely what will come is another win, which will make a win-win-win situation for a sustainable world. When we say women in innovation have a very critical role, I would like to give a figure to it, which has been discussed at UN. So if women contributors are brought mainstream, they would bring in additional $240 billion in the economy with the work that they are doing in digital technology and STEM, and which is huge amount. There are few facts and figures, shared at the UN, and I'm just sharing here again for our reference that only 28% of women are in science and technology workforce. Women's participation in general in engineering is as low as 8%. Yeah, but at the same time, if they contribute in something like in case of water, they bring in 6 times more effectiveness to the projects that they are working in. 50% of the global South nations don't have access to internet. If that's the case of the nation, what to talk about women from those representative nations? Women make up just 25% of the workers in the data and AI. That means a very ghastly future could be there which would lead to more women abuse, more violence, and all of these through technologies if women are not included in the innovation. Even when women have the same levels of education, literacy, and income, they end up being paid less. That's unfortunate, reality of the world. Only 3% STEM CEOs, as was mentioned by, earlier by Ms. Pradhan, and which was also resonated by Ms. Neha here. So women hold only 15% of STEM jobs, and just 18% of those 15% are in C-suites, that is in the directorship positions. Okay, so 48% of domestic violence survivors experience online abuse or harassment after leaving the relationship. Now, this is about the abuse. 58% of girls in survey experience harassment on social media. Had this been, a reality that women would have been contributing to the technology development from the start and in an equal and a responsible manner, I think these figures would be much, much less. So this brings us to the understanding that it's very critical that women have a role to play in innovation and technology, not only for gender equality, but for a responsible and a sustainable world. So when we look at innovation per se, it is a blend of intuition, inspiration, and imagination together. When these three together form a right blend, that then comes the innovation. So I bring a perspective from an academician here in relation to my PhD in sustainability, eco-conscious attitude and behavior. Definitely attitude and the norms, the societal norms, lead to the behavioral intention to do something good, which then results into an action. So people's intentions sets or tends to align them with their original values, which then leads to the desired outcome or a desired action. So looking at the crossroads at the innovation, actually intuition and logic both go along, but too much of focus with logic, which is typically, the job of, the right side brain, where logic is very strong, and which is usually true with the male innovators. If we look at the innovation, then just with that brain point of view, probably it may not be complete. What we need that innovation to be complete is the left side brain, where the intuitions are very strong. Intuition also help to iterate, the ideas when they come up. And when the iteration happens over and over again, actually then the innovations improvise to be a better innovation. And I think that's what we require when it comes to a responsible innovation for a sustainable world. In that sense, I would like to bring in what we have been contributing from Govardhan Ecovillage towards this responsible innovation and my journey, particularly as a Chief Sustainability Officer. During the time of COVID, second wave of pandemic, we got from Google 88 ventilators sponsored, which were distributed pan-India, and these were worth 13.5 crores. So I came across the photographs of people, corpus just being burnt without even their relatives being around. It was a very devastating kind of reality at that particular point of time. So with that, as a very disturbing reality and a lesson, I wanted to contribute in some meaningful manner. And as part of the team that we have at Google, me and my colleague Yachneet, we made proposals, and where Google was able to help us out with these ventilators. We were also part of the Plastic Tide Turner Challenge program as part of UNEP. So plastic is a ghastly reality again. We are consuming 5 grams of plastic in a micro form or in the nano form every week. That is 1 credit card worth plastic. Either we are eating, we are drinking, or we are breathing. So to help work upon or combat this challenge that we have of plastic and the rising, mountains of plastic, we decided to combat with supporting this Tide Turner Challenge program. So for this particular program, we reached out and we got 43,000 students to participate in this program with UNEP, and which was recognized by UN as a substantial contribution. And definitely, not only these 43,000 students have transformed, but I'm sure their families have transformed. So now the transformation will take a reverse sequence, that the children will lead responsible innovation in their families. With this, we were also announced as a Faith for Earth counselors, and under this, we could substantially contribute in many ways. One of the most important ways was we implemented 300 kilowatt worth of solar power plant, and which provides almost 75% of the electricity needs at Govardhan Ecovillage. And as part of the promise, we also wanted to bring a very sustainable solution for composting the organic waste. This is the layout of the organic composting plant that we established at Govardhan Ecovillage, where we wanted to save the space for composting. So we went vertical instead of horizontal. So this is what, if we have a right intent and we have a blend to also, in intuitions-based creativity, what it results is into a substantial innovation. So at the end, what I would like to say is sustainable world needs us. Sustainable world needs women to balance the creativity energy in such a manner that it brings in the feminine compassion, the feminine, genuine intent to do something good in the world, and to ensure that the greed doesn't consume the good in the world. So for this, we need women. And with this, over to you, Ankita. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Aditi. Thank you for showing that WIN really means women in innovation, and also for bringing out the how GEV contributed to during this excruciating times of COVID. And I really feel that having more women in the room, right, like we have right now, triggers increased innovation and improves problem solving in business. So thank you so much for your amazing talk, and for your presentation as well. Thank you. I thank all the speakers. Now we'll be taking questions so that we are on time. We have some questions for each of you, but we'll keep the answers short. We have some questions relaying from our audience as well. So Dr. Aditi, I have the first question for you. How does spirituality-led self-transformation trigger the right intent? And then how do intuitions harness responsible innovation? How can digital technologies help pace up responsible innovation?
Okay, thank you so much, Ankita. Such a beautiful question. I hope we or wished we had more time, but I'm sure we are all pacing out of time. Just wanted to share that when I came to the faith in the Vaishnav tradition, ISKCON, the spiritual mentor that I had, Radhanath Swami, and all of the thought leaders who were following him, completely changed my perspective of how my PhD work should be. And that is the time that I decided to do my PhD in sustainability. And this PhD in sustainability became a foundation for all my work that I have been able to do, and whatever little transformation that we have been able to bring in. So I think, the faith plays a very critical role in the self-transformation. The change which happens inside brings the change outside. It's just a reflection of what has happened inside. Yeah. So that is my 1 minute answer to this question. Thank you, Ankita. Over to
Thank you, Dr. Aditi. I also wish we had more time. But talking about faith, our next question, I think, is directed towards Miss Rukmini. So the question is, how can spirituality help young women leaders tune into the divine energy and get empowered for responsible action?
Thank you so much. This was such an illuminating panel. I feel so inspired to be a listener here. Deep listening is one of the qualities of a woman. So I was thinking that, when a woman considers herself sacred and beloved to her family, to her community, but also to the divine, then she sees herself in a different way. I'm a spiritual being. I'm very beloved to that supreme beloved. So I think Bhagavad Gita talks about 3 secrets. First of all, in the beginning of Bhagavad Gita, that you are spirit. We are all spirit. All living beings are of the same spirit essence. And second of all, how can we access that spiritual identity? By action in devotion, by love in action, by action in gratefulness. This is bhakti yoga. So that would be the second secret, I would say, from Bhagavad Gita. And the third is where Krishna reveals in the very end of Bhagavad Gita that you are so beloved to me. You are my beloved. So that, again, the supreme beloved is revealing that you are so beloved. In that way, we see ourselves as sacred. We see our contributions, our innovations as sacred. And in that way, divinity can work through us. We can be instruments of the divine in whatever we're doing in the world, in science or just in our own household. So thank you. That would be my answer. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your for bringing and highlighting the importance of Bhagavad Gita and what Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. Again, continuing on the same theme, Miss Anita, the next question is for you. How does faith-based women leadership get more involved in governance and policy? And also, how do you think they can contribute differently?
Thank you very much for your question and for this really most wonderful panel. Very happy to be part of that. Yes, first of all, I would like quickly to share some examples how women of faith really already have contributed to policies and to governance and how they are doing it. One example is back from 1999, when the Brahmakumaris was able to demonstrate that we can generate steam for cooking for so many people. And that was done under the leadership and really guidance of Dadi Prakash Mani. And then the Indian government took it and they created a policy that allowed many people later on to implement similar systems because they were getting some subsidies for that, both manufacturers and also end users. So that was very specific way and example, very concrete example what happened. And then the second person whose name I would like to say, and I'm doing it with great honor, is our current President of India, Madam Draupadi Murmu, and she is truly the woman of faith. And she is the first tribal president of India, the second woman, and her character is the way she governs. So the governance of her is based on her character of courage, of determination, of resilience, of love, of inclusivity. And I think she's inspiring so many people, and I'm sure that will move on. And then she's also having very clear vision, and this vision, I do hope, and I'm sure it will also become the foundation of policy in the future. So she says that for her, the priority is to make sure that both youth and women have proper right. And she speaks about the role of spirituality, the light of spirituality that will show the path to everyone, and also the knowledge of spirituality, which should be used in any sustainable development. So these are, I think, the ways how women of faith can impact both policy and governance. And I think the contribution is because women of faith they master the balanced leadership. They combine both feminine qualities and also so-called masculine. So it's love and determination, it's humility and resilience, and so on and so forth. I think this is very unique. And they are also characterized by this integrity inside out, which creates inclusivity. And last but not least, women of faith, I think they lead by example. And this is what we need today. There is enough words and speaking. Now we see things happening. And how to do it? I think different ways than current politics works. I think it should be done in a non-violent way, but confident way. And I think power of togetherness is very important to make it happen. So that would be my short reply to your question. Thank you very much for this beautiful meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Anita. That was a very, very, very well thought response. Thank you for bringing out how women can be empowered. And actually, thank you also for touching on how we can do it non-violently, because our next question is for Ms. Ruby. And the question is, that unfortunately abuse leaves impression forever on the hearts of victims, women and children. And how can compassion be married to digital technology to extend this empathetic support?
First of all, we need to understand we have marginalized populations across the board. It's around the world. And so how do we use technology from an empathic perspective, right? The way I wrote this quote, and I'm going to read it to you, says, technology is benign. Its mass is not abnormal or harmful. However, when technology is created and driven to support self-serving entities that weaponize their data and processes, this benign entity becomes cancerous, where it leaches out and exploits the weak, disenfranchised, and vulnerable populations. So if we want to bring compassion to this world and pursue compassion, we actually have to go to the thrust of the heart of technologies and to understand its exploitative processes and do something about it to make sure that these technologies don't continue to exploit the vulnerable populations.
Thank you, Ms. Gallian. Yes, having female leaders and really blending in compassion is very, very important. And also speaking of digital technologies, our next question is for our technologist, Ms. Pradhan. How can digital technologies be designed for empathetic and inclusive development, especially with a focus on women from rural backgrounds or tribal backgrounds?
Yeah, so there are many ways in which now technology is being leveraged very actively. One example I can think of locally here is that there are a lot of rural farmers that now have access to platforms where they can trade in the vegetables that they're growing to the urban population, right? So what the technology is doing is connecting the two ends in a way that their hard work is kind of getting the best out of the evolved or developed world, right? So, and there are so many such examples where the platforms or digital technologies are bridging that gap. And as and when we bridge that gap, we will establish more equality and equity.
Thank you. Thank you so much. All the questions are coming in theme, actually, speaking about equality. For Ms. Neha, we have a question, like being young women in STEM, did you observe the system cause discrimination against women, and how do you think mentoring can, resolve this or bridge this gap?
I think corporate is a very big system. And like any other system that we have seen across, the world or globally, each of the systems have challenges and benefits. And similarly, as a young woman who's trying to work around STEM, I have had my share of challenges and benefits that I see. And how I feel that mentoring can be one of the mechanisms to help navigate those issues per se is one, mentors, like Dr. Aditi mentioned that installation of faith they put in a lot of faith. There's empathy, that we've just saw from Ms. Ruby's presentation about, the violence, the abuse. So when there's empathy in the relation of mentoring, it really allows you to access information in right direction and also understand whether the information that's being transferred or shared is for our benefit or should be taken the other way around. So I think it really gives you clarity coming from someone who has experienced all of those paths. And I believe that mentoring does have a long way and a long route, basically in this whole journey of corporate and STEM. So yeah.
Thank you. We totally believe, yes, mentoring really encourages so much of social interaction and a non-competitive atmosphere. Thank you so much. There is one more question that we can take from the audience, and I think that is for Radha Cornea. What is ISKCON's goal of involving the UN in policy making? I feel the rural places will still get lost in such a policy. Wouldn't it be more effective to involve devotees and local groups to push for local policy changes in the specific areas in need?
Well, I appreciate the question. That's a very good point. We are brand new to the UN space. And at this point, we are there to learn and not to ask anyone to do anything or try to tell anyone to do anything. So I think the questioner is absolutely right that if we want things to change on the ground level, we have to be the hands and the arms and the voices that make that happen. But I also think that we have a great deal to learn from, just as we can see from this program, so many fantastic ideas, projects, and we have so much to learn in this UN space. And I hope that we can take what we are learning and turn that into policies that will truly benefit the women that we serve.
Thank you, Ms. Radha Cornea. We have one more question, which seems like a burning question. Maybe one of our technologist speakers can take. How do we make sure that these new technologies are not tampering with Krishna's design?
I think one of the things that if you may allow, I feel like adding here is that understanding the right use of the technology is very important. So when you actually use any piece of information or technology in right purpose or doing right savor or service, automatically the outcome is going to go or is probably going to be in the mood of service. So having the right consciousness in utilizing any of the piece of information or technology, I feel is very important. And then that's how we can minimize or mitigate that gap of, exploiting the technology or tampering, Krishna's technology. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think that was the theme that was brought by Anita as well. Thank you. I think service and seva attitude is key here, so that we are not like being tampering with Krishna's design. Thank you so much. That brings us to the end of this very impactful, for me, the starting of the day here. And thank you again so much for your presence. We had really from the deep within my heart, very eminent and impactful speakers here, beautiful conversations, thought-provoking, so many takeaways from here. I really want to also give my vote of thanks to the august audience here for asking such brilliant questions too. And grateful to Brahmakumaris and GEV who agreed to co-host this event. Thank you again. Thank you so much for your esteemed presence.